So thank you all for being here for our Introduction to Kabbalah, Part 3, The Middle Pillar and the Tree of Life in a Sphere. This is Part 3 of our Kabbalistic talks. If you have not had a chance to view Part 1 and Part 2, we're going to jump into things a lot faster today. If any of it goes over your head, just go back and review Part 1, Part 2. That's going to onboard you to everything we're talking about today. One thing that I need to start doing in my talks is, so in today's talk, we're going to talk about the middle pillar, perhaps do a meditation together if everyone thinks that that is a something that's feasible. It's not always the easiest thing to do meditations virtually, especially on a one-way stream, but we'll see. And if not, we can always just give you the directions and you can do that at home later. But I'd like to talk about the middle pillar, why it's important, why it forms such an integral part of the Golden Dawn system, and why, and other ways to use it, why it is so essential to your esoteric practice. And then we're going to go into deeper theory on the tree of life in a sphere, and basically explain that diagram on the left, and some history about where it comes from in the original RR at AC, the Rose Rube at Ordre Crucis, that is the inner order of the original Golden Dawn, how they utilized it for both personal work, how they utilized it to connect in the astral from great distances, and how they used it to do some really interesting magical healing work, which could be very appropriate for the time we're in right now as well. So without further ado, I'm going to start plugging things in the beginning and end, because I just never remember to do that. So if you are new to our talks, you can visit us and follow us in our OMS YouTube. We have over 30 webinars on there, something like 40 hours of webinars, ranging from Martinism, the Gnostic Church, Kabbalah, the Golden Dawn, esotericism, alchemy, all kinds of things, and every week we're expanding that offering. So stay tuned, subscribe to that so you can get the videos first thing they come out. Not everything comes out in Facebook Live. Also, visit us and follow us on our Facebook page, Ordre Martiniste Souverains, facebook.com/martinismnet. And if you are interested in Martinism as an initiatory path, as a spiritual path for yourself, then go to Martinism Aspirants to OMS. It's a private Facebook group that we use to, you have to answer some questions to get in. We have to hopefully see that you're a sincere individual. If you are a Martinist from a different rite, we do require candidates to start over at first degree. That includes SIIs. We've had a lot of SIIs, bishops, Roquois, Grand Profess, who have started over and gone through our process because it is so radically different than that of the traditional systems. It's like going through a progressive Golden Dawn order, such as the SRC, that kicks the inner order to the outer order, compared to the old Golden Dawn. Very different thing. A lot more work done in the outer order and things that people have never been exposed to. So it's necessary to go through that process so we can bring you to the way that we unveil the mystery. Last but not least, martinism.net. That is our flagship website. Lots of links on there, lots of things for you to click around on, lots of education videos, and download links to our public documents folder. So you can download the threshold of initiation, the application, the pre-associate operation, all of those kinds of things. Thank you. I did press record. Thank you for reminding me on that. So without further ado, the tree of life of the Kabbalah. The tree of life we know in these colors. Notice that I've removed the paths because we're not going to be worrying about the paths today. We're dealing specifically with the 10 Sephiroth. These colors of these Sephiroth, as well as the paths as you're used to seeing them, i.e. right there, were solidified by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, found in 1888. Before then, there was no unified color scheme. And not only did they unify a color scheme, they made 4 worlds of color schemes, which we'll get to later in the talk. The tree has gone through many metamorphoses and transitions. We talk a little bit about that in part 1. Maybe we'll do a pure talk on the evolution of the tree at some point. We'll talk about the Kircher tree, Luria, the Gras tree, the French versions of the paths, and then the Golden Dawn versions of the paths, which have stuck. But today we're specifically talking about the body of light and using the middle pillar as a way to activate your astral senses, your astral body, your etheric body, in order to enter into internal meditation and contemplation, in order to enter into your inner temple. And we're going to use this as our map. So these 10 Sephiroth, which as we know, manifest through what is called the lightning flash. This diagram of the tree of life. I said I'm going to start learning how to direct my hands. I guess this hand points up the right direction. The tree of life manifesting down the lightning flash. And that is the flaming sword from Genesis. It goes down from 1 to 10, very simple mathematical Pythagorean formula. 1 through 10, Keter, down to Malkut. And in the path of return, we go from Malkut up. That would be called the serpent's path, as we've talked about before. So the middle pillar, we're going to use a process of lighting up these energy spheres within your body from top to bottom, similar to the lightning flash. Whereas in the Eastern systems of the chakras, you generally work from the bottom up. And there's reasons for both of those. But we're going to explain why it is you start from top down. Namely, you always want to start with the highest name, the pure, undifferentiated divine light. And you start with that pure white divine light, which we'll talk about more in depth later. And you bring it down, and it can be colored as you go through the Sephiroth, as it comes to differentiation. On a more simple level, you can do the operation using just white light. You don't have to color anything. In fact, the traditional operation is just brilliant divine white light. I consider a more advanced practice to add the colors. Experiment, see what the differences are like for you. These 10 Sephiroth are receptive vessels, containers, or kli, for the light, which is Ur in Hebrew, of divinity to emanate and flow into and through. They are therefore primarily passive or receptive and feminine. But when properly harmonized, they learn not only to receive, but also to give. And truly that's where the definition of Kabbalah as to receive, but also to give and to receive, which has been filtered down in modern day as like a mouth-to-ear teaching, oral tradition, etc., they begin to pass that light down as well, and then eventually hopefully reflect that light back up. And that is this process of Tikkun, or restoration, that we're working towards, of restoring the worlds, what was broken. We're not going to get too in-depth with that because we went very in-depth in video 2 about the Shavira in that. In this diagram, you see in the center first, this is an image of Adam Kadmon, the first man, the divine man, the archetypal man, purely a mental being. Just like the Neoplatonic idea of archetypes, of the ideal, made in the image of God. This is the one first created, the man first created the 22 Hebrew letters. This is how you can see the tree of life structured around the human body in 2 different ways. On the left, that probably comes from Kabbalah de Nadada. That looks like a Mather's diagram. And you see the man with the crown. See the points of the Sephiroth upon his body. On the right, maybe it's a little more clear because we're used to the colors. Colors are forces and signatures of forces. And the child of the children of the forces art thou. So these colors help us with so many things, with associating elements. Obviously, fire is red, water is blue, air becomes yellow, the meter between those two. And the more you work with these, the more they'll make sense. Venus of the green of nature, the green of passion, of love, of desire. Hood, orange is the intellect. Purple, Yesod, the regenerative organs, the astral, the formative. And then the colors of earth itself in these kind of muddy, citron, russet, olive, and black, containing the 4 elements within earth. Anyways, this is all just a really quick review about where we've been in videos 1 and 2. One thing to consider with this tree of life is this concept of the Partzifum, that these are faces. They are representations of deity personified as human beings, or archetypal human beings. Beginning with Yud, the father, Abba, the king, in Hakma, naturally. Ema, the mother, He, in Bina. Zor and Pin, the son, composed of the Ruach, specifically seated in Tiferet, but truly composed of all the 6 Sephiroth around Tiferet. You can visualize Da'at there. And this is the short face, the impatient face, the angry face. It is the new king, the young king, very much symbolized by Horus as well. And you see on the left, that mirrors the same image we're talking about. That's Yud He Vav He going down vertically, which also shows a man. The head is Yud, the shoulders of He, Vav, the trunk, Hey final being the body. And Hey final becomes Malka, Kala, the bride, which is specifically Malkut. And Kabbalah is always about relationships. It is innately sexual. It's about, in the fall, like we talk about in video 2 especially, there's this divorce between the father and the mother. You could say they turn away from each other. Likewise, we have to learn how to make them turn together and make the bride and the prince face each other again as well. And part of that can be typified by our middle pillar process, by our tree life in a sphere, by rebuilding this perfected tree within our sphere of sensation. Because the tree you're seeing on the right is one version of the perfected tree. It is a rectified tree. Maybe not perfected, because there might be something else to occur, and maybe we'll show that we did already in one. So these are conceptions of personas to help us further understand how these Sephiroth operate. And these personas can exist in just one tree or in the expanded tree in 4 worlds, which we'll get to later. So getting into making this a part of your body, right? We're familiar with the diagram on the right, the tree of life superimposed upon the human being. It's important that you don't look at it and see it. You don't go, okay, in front of me, on the right, that must be this one, right? That must be blue goes here and red goes here. No, you want to turn around and back into the diagram, okay? Actually, it probably makes more sense from you looking at me to do this. To back into the diagram. So, red is here. White is in the top of your crown. If I spin around, it will help. White, header, Hakma, gray, Bina, black, Kesed, blue, Gevora, red, Tiferet in your heart, yellow, down to your left hip, green of Netzach, down to your right hip, the tawny orange of Hood, down to your genitals and groin, purple of Yesod, down to your feet, Malkut. So that's how you want to visualize this. Right on the red on right, a little easy mnemonic. On the left, you see a diagram of the 3 Kabbalistic parts of the soul. So this is another way to divide the tree. We saw it a moment ago divide into 4, Yud He Vav He formula. Here we're dividing it into a 3-form formula, namely the Neshama, the Ruach, and the Nefesh. The Neshama you can visualize as a divine white triangle from Keter to Hakma to Bina. Okay? The Neshama is seen as is generally referred to as 1, but truly Neshama is the name of the last sphere in that. It is Bina, the Neshama. First, you have Yakida. This is the undifferentiated divine spark. It's maybe similar to the Atman in Hindu traditions. It is that divine spark that is within all things. You could liken it to the spark of the Gnostics. You could liken it to the residue left over after the Shavira. Okay? This connects you with the divine all. The Kia becomes this animating life force that perhaps maybe becomes a little more differentiated for this individual. And the Neshama holds those 3 together, makes it into the divine soul. Okay, the divine aspect of man, symbolized by a triangle. The Ruach you can see symbolized as a sphere, composed from the throat, to Gevora, to Kesed, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, centered and whirling around Tiferet, just as the planets whirl around the sun. This is your thinking sensation. These are your reasonings. These are different motivations. Like we talked about in video 1, these are aspects of your persona. These are all the different functions of your personality, that what make Paul Paul. Okay? Whereas this is transpersonal. Personal. And the Nefesh would be your animal body, your instincts. Now, animal gets a tough rap sometimes, right? We're always saying, like, transcend the animal nature, kill the ego, kill the lower nature. Sure. But as opposed to killing, we're transforming. You need to have a nefesh. You need to have a guf. That's the very bottom. The guf, more properly, would be the entire vessel itself, right? The body itself, whereas the nefesh is the lower half of Yesod down to Malkut. It is your automatic instincts. It is your, it is you breathing right now. You don't think about breathing. And if you don't have an nefesh, you're not going to be breathing. You're also not going to have the urge to eat or to reproduce or do any of the other things that we need to do to be beings. Likewise, we need an ego situated in Tiferet. We do need an ego. We need a vessel. We need a persona to be able to interact with the world, right? But we want to learn not to have that nefesh, those lower drives, those lower passions drive us and rule us. Doesn't mean that we don't act upon them sometimes, but it's about consciousness and awareness, submitting the lower to the higher, which in the outer order process would be in outer order process of any organization. We're essentially doing that in every system, right? You're learning what your lower nature is, what your drives are, what your persona is, what the divine is, and you're putting that lower automatic nature under the direction and rule of the human, of the truly human, right? Which is seen as actually higher at this point. And then eventually you want to put that as well under the rule of the higher. So there is a bottom up, there's a top down occurring. We are thinking in trans-dimensional consciousness. Above, below, left, right, within, without. So with that, let's try doing a meditation, okay? I'm going to turn off my camera because I think it looks silly to meditate on camera. I don't know if you can see me. It looks like you still can, but it's not recording me. So with that, before entering upon any meditation, let's perform some kind of a centering. And this can be any form of pranayama, any form of slow breathing, conscious breathing, breathing with depth. We want to breathe all the way down to our lower tantian, the base of your belly. Okay? Not upward chest breathing, but I'm going to show you my camera again just for a moment. Not upward chest breathing where you and your shoulders move, but belly breathing where your belly expands. Big Buddha belly. Then use the core. Get all that old air out. Okay? Don't be embarrassed. Let that expand. We're going to breathe in through the nose all the way down. We're going to hold it for a moment. We're going to exhale using our core. Get all that old air out. Hold it empty. Okay, that's what you're doing in your stomach. Let's enter into this practice for a few moments. I'll give a count. You don't have to follow the count. You can use whatever works for you. Fourfold breath is just the idea of beginning pranayama that we are in for a consistent amount, holding for a consistent amount, out for a consistent amount, holding empty for a consistent amount. And by doing this, we slow down our rational mind, our thinking mind, our conscious mind, our day-to-day mind, and we allow our parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. We allow our unconscious to start to awaken. We allow the body to relax. And we allow the mind to begin its first centering. So with that, let's begin with an in breath. Hold. Out. Hold. In. Hold. Out. Hold. Maybe slow it down. Let your mind solely focus upon your breath. Now, this in itself is a practice we could continue 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes. And we'll be returning to it But now that perhaps we found a little bit of a centering, let's go into some common things done before any ritual practice. One of these may be a banishing, a clearing, or a setting of a sacred space. This is an image of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram as used by the Golden Dawn, in which they'd use divine names to clear a space and to bring in a positive influence. This is obviously what Golden Dawn people will do, but it can be as simple as sprinkling water, lighting incense, setting candles in 4 quarters, or it can be a purely mental exercise. Okay, we're not going to be doing an LBRP or anything like that together today. There are so many things out there you can do. If you need some tips, you can hit me up. I can send you some videos on these kinds of things. But our focus is actually the middle pillar practice, so we're going to skip beyond that. We are going to talk about the Kabbalistic Cross, however, because I think that it is intrinsically linked with the middle pillar, and it's this prayer that comes from it's the suffix, the later suffix to the Lord's Prayer. Thou art the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Or in Hebrew, Atah Melkut Vigabora Vigadula Leolam. Amen. Now, what's special about this is that we can use this to begin lighting up our astral body. Okay? You can do this internally, you can do it standing, you can do it in your meditation, you can do it physically. But this idea that we talked about tapping into that universal wellspring of divine light, that Ein Sof, that infinite unknown that we're seeking for, the eternal, whatever we want to call that. And you start with centering and then reaching yourself up as far and high into that divine conception as you can, and piercing and pulling that down into your keter, into your personal keter that you carry. And you vibrate or say, Atah. So you affirm, thou art. You draw that light down into your heart and see that ray go all the way down to your feet. Malkut, the kingdom. You draw that light to your right, or maybe shoot it out to the ends of the universe. Vigabora, the power. You draw that power to your left, or maybe see it go out into an infinite cross. Vegadula, the glory. You bring it to your heart. Leolam, forever and ever, throughout all eternity, all the world. Amen. Center that in your heart. This already begins this process of rectification, of balancing the individual according to divine words. And you're affirming that thou art the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Notice that as opposed to the Catholic version of going down, bottom, left, right, down, bottom, right, left, Gavor is on the right, right? Very simple practice. I recommend using this to open and close any kind of a middle pillar exercise. So we can say very simply, Atah Malkut Vegebora Vegadula Leolam. Amen. Or whatever works there for you as far as tones. Getting into how the middle pillar structures on the body itself. We've seen the tree of life put around your entire sphere. We're now centering it directly into our middle pillar. Okay? I'm going to cut my camera. And we're eschewing the pillars for the moment because we're going to the center. We're not going to the extremities of the right, the extremities of the left. We're tapping into this balanced conduit, funnel of light through your primary centers. On the left are the Sephiroth, applied to the human body. I know that's not perfectly balanced because that human figure perhaps isn't a perfectly proportionate figure, but hey, whatever, you get the idea. Keter in the crown, vibrating the name Eye. Da'at in the throat, vibrating the name Yod He Vav He Elohim, if you want to say the letters, or Yahweh Elohim, or some people even say Tetragrammaton Elohim, which is funny because you're literally saying 4-lettered name Elohim. I prefer to actually say the name Yahweh or Yod He Vav He. Then you're drawing that. Again, we talked about colors. Eschew the colors. There is there for your to reference. Just work with white light for the beginning. We're pulling this light from the crown to the throat to the heart to the groin to the feet. So we pull that light into our heart fill it as much as we can, vibrating the name Yahweh Eloah Veda'at. And we pull that light down into Yesod, and we vibrate the divine name Shaddai El Kai. Lastly, we pull it down to Malkut at our feet, Adonai Haaretz. Now, those words might need some definition. Eye, that is the name Eye Eshar Eye that spoke to Moses in the burning bush. I am that I am. It is considered one of the most supreme names, if not the supreme name in the Hebrew Kabbalah, because it purely is being. It's I am that I am. It's very Descartes in that sense, right? It's just pure essence and being. We come down into the throat, Yahweh Elohim, Lord of gods, or Lord gods. Many different ways to interpret that. Elohim is a feminine plural of a masculine singular, namely El. The Elohim are actually is the name of God used in Genesis when it says, "Let us make man in our image, after our image and likeness." Truly, it's "Let us make Adam in our image." In the image of the Elohim made they them. It's plural. Male and female made they them. So there is this inherent unified hermaphroditic duality in Adam Kadmon, containing all things, containing all opposites, all pairs, but unified. We come down to Tiferet, that same prefix of Yahweh, the Lord, God, Eloah, another permutation of El, Veda'at, or Veda'at, of knowledge, Lord God of knowledge. So there's this conception that the heart, that Tiferet, the ego center, has something to do with knowledge that we're seeking to attain, and that it is there that in the imagination of Tiferet that knowledge comes to light. And that could perhaps point to that this is truly a mental exercise and a mental process, the imagination. We come down to the groin, Yesod, Shaddai El Kai, living God of life, Chai, like L'chaim, so the living God of life, and that also definitely suits into the conception of generation, right? And finally, come down to the bottom, Adonai Haaretz, Lord of the earth. Again, very fitting for Malkut. So, on the right, you see another diagram of pulling that light down, and then down into your feet, and then circulating it around. And we'll talk more about that in a moment as well. But this one's a little more unique because we're trying to do a meditation over a stream. We'll see if it works out, but let's try this out. So we're going to go back to our fourfold breath. Before we do that, why are we doing the middle pillar? What's the point of this? The idea here is that we are pulling down into our guff, into our physical bodies, as well as our astral and mental bodies, the divine light of the eternal, the undifferentiated divine light of Keter, or of Ein Sof, perhaps. And this is a process that there's so much you can read on. People will say that perhaps you are chemically changing the cells in your body and that different things will occur. I'll leave that to you to judge what this means and what happens. I'll leave that to your experience rather than trying to hear what we say should happen. But you're bringing down this purifying and enlivening divine light. First side effects could be increased energy, energetic tingles, awareness in the body, vitality, etc., etc. We can also open up some things that maybe you're not ready for. You might open up some vessels, some shadows that you have to deal with. And that's definitely one of the problems that occurs in Kundalini Yoga, which has been touted as like a fitness thing in the West. And when it's done right, sometimes people have Kundalini pops that really screws their head up because maybe the energy gets so real they can't deal with it, or things awaken that they have to deal with, that serpent. I think that's a little bit outside the scope of what we're doing right now, but just knowing that in this practice, we're truly bringing down just divine light and looking to enliven these parts of ourselves, these Partzifum. I think this is a necessary practice, whether you do it in the middle pillar format or in other formats we'll show you later, before any major ritual, meditation, operation, etc. Because this is what will truly help make your operations go from make-believe and I'm imagining a pentagram on the wall, or I'm calling forth the Shema Mepherish spirit and not feeling anything. What's going on? Or I'm just drawing these sigils and what's happening? This is what can truly enliven it with life force, with divine force, with theurgical force. And it's something that everyone experiences differently. For me, my Taurian nature, I'm very sensual, I'm very in tune with my body. I feel it physically. I know when rituals are working well because I feel the energy in my body. It's much like the Holy Spirit in Christianity, or Reiki and certain forms of Eastern healing. It's this conception that you should be able to feel this energy in your spheres and then learn how to direct and move that. You can use this for self-healing, like in Reiki. You can use this for sending healing out to others. You can use this to enliven your talismans. And now when you're projecting your pentagrams or consecrating your talismans or evoking your spirits and past masters, there's a current behind you. This idea of pulling a current, okay? And I think one of the best ways to train it is through a process such as the middle pillar or the egg exercise, or what we give our OMS members, the exercise of the circles, which is essentially a simplified version of this, using Martinist symbols, Martinist terms. Here we're going Hermetic Qabalah. Okay, going back to the root of where one of the best systems, I think, and best ways that this was expressed in the last couple hundred years. So we're pulling this down to enliven us with that divine light and then be able to use that, whether in ourselves just for healing and balancing, or to make something occur in a ritual or an operation. Okay? Hope that answered any questions that might be on that. And let's jump into a very simple middle pillar meditation. So let's return back to our fourfold breath for a few moments. In for 4, I won't count this time. Hold, out, and then empty. Find your own pace. I try to find the longest, deepest breaths I can for a period of time until it becomes natural. So let's start with in. Holding. Out. Holding. Let the outside world fall away. Let yourself come into the temple of your own body. Let your consciousness begin to rest in your heart. I like to continue this practice as long as necessary in private work, to where you feel truly centered. Might start get those tingles occurring. And then on your own, let's together do the Kabbalistic Cross. The words are there on the screen. Reach up to the infinite Keter, the infinite light. Hold down to our Keter and vibrate Ata. Ata. Seeing that brilliant white sphere of Keter light up. Pull that light into your heart, send it down to your feet. See your feet light up in white. Malkut. Draw that light to your right shoulder or out to the infinite ends of the universe. Draw that energy to your left or out to the ends of the universe. Bring that light back into your heart center. Center it. Bring your hands together, uniting the two pillars in your heart. Amen. The image is on the screen if you need an aid. But turn your attention to the crown of your head. Direct your breath to the crown of your head. Direct your focus, your will, your intention. See a brilliant white sphere, the size of a dinner plate, emanating out brilliant white divine light in all directions of space. We will concentrate that force in your Keter by vibrating the name AA 3 times, each with full breaths. Continue to breathe into your Keter. Feel it solidify that energy to a degree. Feel it invoked to your crown. Feel its magnetic pull. We will always keep pulling from Keter from here on out. It is an infinite wellspring that can never be exhausted. It is a source of inspiration, of peace, of comfort, of light. Every name here we will pull from Keter all the way down to that sphere. We'll saturate that sphere as a vessel. Think of it as an alchemical alembic. You're filling with this white divine light. It can be fiery divine light, a fiery water like the Ishmaim of heaven. See that next sphere fill. As we pull the light down to our throat, brilliant white sphere into At. With each inhalation, we'll pull it in. With each vibration, we'll solidify it into our throat as we vibrate Yahweh Elohim 3 times. Pull it in as you breathe from Keter to your throat. Take some moments to feel that white light surrounding within, without your throat center. Palace of communication. The palace which connects the head and the heart. And again, we'll turn our attention back to Keter. We'll pull from Keter through to At, down into Tiferet, filling the chemical limit of your heart with brilliant, white, fiery water. You can also say Continue pulling that light from your Keter through your throat to your heart. Feel that light filling, feel it burning within the center of your heart. It's a brilliant, divine sun within you. Your immanent sun, reflecting the transcendent sun above. Now we'll pull from Keter through Da'at, through Tiferet, down to Yesod in your groin region, vibrating Shaddai El Kai. Shaddai El Kai. Shaddai El Kai. Shaddai El Kai. Feel your genital regions, your generative organs enlivening. Feel activity, feel energy, warmth, life, the root of the Almighty God of life. Saturate our sphere with spheres of these divine names. We'll now return our attention up to the crown, up to Keter. Pull all the way down through each Sephiroth, down to your feet. Does not matter if you're sitting, lying down, cross-legged, kneeling. Down to your astral body of your feet, to the root that connects you to the earth. A brilliant white sphere there will vibrate Adonai Haaretz 3 times. Adonai Feel the groundedness as you connect back, earth. Feel your physical body. We can now circulate this light. In your astral vision, your inner sight, you'll pull this light from your feet up as you inhale up through your groin, through your heart, through your throat, up to your crown. As you exhale, see a brilliant shower of light going all over your body. Collecting that light as raindrops down at your feet. Inhaling again, up the middle pillar to your crown. Exhaling it out around your whole body. Continue this a few more times. We inhale up. Connecting with Keter. Exhaling it out around your body. We can make this more specific, or we can use this. We can bring it up the front of our body, inhaling up the front of your body, this light around your sphere of sensation, around your egg of your aura, up to your crown. You can exhale down your backside, connecting back at your feet. We can inhale it up our right side from our feet, all the way up to your crown. Exhaling it down your left side, collecting against your feet. We can inhale it up our backside, up our subconscious, up the backside to your crown. Exhaling it down the fronts of your body. Collect again at your feet. And again to your left, inhaling up the left side of the body, up to your crown. Exhaling it down the right side of your body, back to your feet. You can make this more active, like a caduceus. At your feet, see it spiral as you inhale, spiraling up your middle pillar clockwise, up to your crown. See it shower around your entire body. It collects at the base. See it spiral counterclockwise up your body. Meeting at Keter, down around your entire body. Let's go back to the basics. Up the center of your middle pillar, up to your crown. See it shower around you. Do this a few more times on your own without me guiding. Now let's center all of this energy. Visualize your Keter and your Malkut, and inhale all those spheres into your heart. Center that energy in your heart. Still seeing all those other spheres, but really focusing on your heart. The alembic of your heart. From here we can end, or from here we can start the egg exercise. We can continually bring this light down from Keter into our heart, filling it as much as you can, again and again with every inhalation, like molten light filling within that alembic until it eventually begins to overflow and pour out to every inch of your being, out your extremities, out your fingers, out your toes. And this can be a very rejuvenating practice. This can be extended ad infinitum into so many other practices. Take a moment now to send that energy to your fingers. Take your hands together, rub them together like you're making a fire. Now hold them apart and feel that energy between your hands. It's just an easy way to feel that. And see if you can direct that energy from your Keter to your heart to your feet, back to your heart, out to your hands, or just simply from your heart to your hands. See if you can feel that energy between your hands. From here, you can begin to learn how to send this energy out, whether in a ritual towards a candle, or towards a sigil, or towards another person in healing. Or you can learn how to put those upon your body wherever you might need healing. It's an excellent practice after this to lay down, put your hands in your heart, and just breathe from Keter to your heart, out into your hands, back into your body, and just see what kinds of amazing sensations and how hot your hands and your heart and your body will become by doing this. We could extend this very long. I'm trying to keep this brief so that we're not sitting here forever just meditating. I think meditation is a personal practice. The goal here is just to give a very basic introduction to this practice and then talk about what it means and how to use it. We should note that some of the original Golden Dawn documents on the vibratory formula of the middle pillar mention that frequent use of this practice can exhaust one or exhaust the heart or cause issues. Not as, I don't believe in that, I don't subscribe to that, as long as you're always pulling from Keter. At this point, we're not using your own energy, we're using the Divine Light's energy, which is infinite, which is inexhaustible. You can always tap back into Keter. And that's why we're always pulling from Keter. You're not pulling from your own self. That's what causes fatigue, exhaustion. And that's where all those popular images of someone passing out after a ritual comes from, right? Always pull to Keter. It's an infinite source of light. Before we talk more about theory, let's do one more balancing, another Kabbalistic cross. So reach up to your crown, center that light in your Keter. Ata, bring it down to your feet. Malkut, to your right shoulder. Vegebora, to your left shoulder. Vegedula, to your heart. Leolam, Amen. That prayer is so powerful, and it has so much in those few words, that thou art the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. It is something that you can contemplate for the rest of your life and continue to have new unfoldings come from it. You might notice that diagram of the cross represents the perfected man. and mirrors the colors in the Tree of Life as well, especially if you back into it. A comment was that the middle pillar was not necessarily a practice of the original Golden Dawn or RODAC, but the vibratory form of the middle pillar was, which we will be getting to in a moment. The earliest version... Now, we do know they were doing practices like this, because we're going to talk about the sphere group and how they use the Tree of Life in a sphere. But the first time I've seen a document published of the middle pillar as we know it was Regardi. If someone else... I also haven't sat and specifically tried to research that one thing. Yeah, you might feel a little lightheaded and cool, right? You might feel a little tingling. And that's why we again balance to the Kabbalistic Cross. We center everything again. There's other ways to do that as well. You could also perform the sign of silence. Okay? The sign of Harpocrates. Let me turn my camera back on. Sealing your limbic. Allowing nothing in, nothing out. Right? Creating a secure sphere in your sphere of sensation or your aura. Now, before we go into the sphere and the sphere group and all those other highly complex concepts, which are super fun, I think that's what some people who are more advanced are waiting for. We've used this in other ways. There's so many ways to do this. I mentioned the egg exercise. You can eschew the Sephiroth and just have yourself in this sphere of an egg, your aura, you know, this circle, and just pulling from the infinite light down into your heart and out around your body. In this version you see here, the exercise of circles, we made this for Martinists. It's funny, I've seen more than a few people who've used this as their profile picture or on different things, and they don't credit who designed this. But it's essentially the same thing. White. We just go Keter, Tiferet, Malkut. Neshama, Ruach, Nefesh. So many ways you can do this. I'm not saying either one is better than the other. Most often I actually tend to do this. I tend to do just 3. E-A-O. There's other names we can use. I only recommend doing this with divine names. You're generally not recommended to do this with even archangelic names, angelic names, but I've definitely done the vibratory formula with those. Anyways, the vibratory form of the middle pillar proper, which an adept brought up in the chat, is basically these 5 stages. It's been a thing that I think has been extremely misunderstood in the history of the Golden Dawn, and we made diagrams to make it comprehensible. So I'm just going to read what the original lecture says, and this is all public material. Let the aspiring adept stand upright. You can also meditate and sit, but stand upright. With the arms stretched out in the form of a Calvary cross, vibrate a divine name, bringing with the formulation thereof a deep inspiration to your lungs. That deep breath we were talking about, right? That lower Tantian breath. Retain the breath, mentally pronouncing the name in your heart, so as to awaken it with the forces you desire to awaken thereby. So, on the left, first diagram is just your 3 spheres. Keter, Tiferet, Malkut. The second diagram is bringing that name into your heart. The third diagram is sending that downwards through your body, past Yesod, but do not allow it to rest there, but taking your physical form for a material basis, i.e. Malkut, send it on into your feet. There you shall momentarily formulate the name. So, Yod-He, Vav-He, and then bringing it upwards into the lungs, breathe it forth strongly while vibrating that divine name. Send your breath steadily forward into the universe so as to awaken the corresponding forces of the name in the outer world. So essentially, in, vibrate the name, hear the name mentally, inhale it, say it, and manifest that force. It is a way that after working with the middle pillar for a long time, you have an ability to invoke a name, invoke a force almost instantaneously. Now, I would say that that is only practical and achievable after you've worked with said force for an extended period of time and established a relationship with it. Let's say if you want to invoke Mars, I wouldn't expect that you can just pick up the divine name of Mars, Elohim Gabor, without ever knowing anything about Mars or knowing something about it and trying to do this and expecting it to occur. Maybe. But this is something I find is very effective after working with a force for a long period of time. And it can apply to any divine name. That last diagram shows it saturating your sphere of sensation. Now, we should note that they would do what is called the attacking sign, the sign of projection. And you'd send that force out into the universe. You can also do that with a hand, do it here. You can also just send it out to your hands. You don't have to make any kind of a sign. It does not have to be a golden non-specific practice. It's an energetic practice. And you'll see very similar things like this in Tantra, in Reiki, other forces, other systems. But it's a way to saturate your sphere with this force, and if you project it out into the world, to awaken it within the macrocosm as well as within your microcosm. The text continues and says, stand with the arms out in the form of a cross, that Kabbalistic cross, that balanced force, right? 4 elements in balance, centered by the 5th. When the breath has been imaginatively sent to the feet and back, bring the arms forward in the sign of the Emperor, vibrating the name out into the universe. On contemplating this, make the sign of silence. So you send it out. This is the on button. This is the off button. Contemplating this, and this also helps seal your auric egg. On contemplating this, make the sign of silence and remain still, contemplating the force you have invoked. This is the secret traditional mode of pronouncing the divine names by vibration. But Mathers warns, beware that you apply it only to the divine names of the gods. If you do this thing ignorantly, in working with elemental or demonic names, you may bring into yourself terrible forces of evil and possession. I definitely don't recommend doing this with poetic spirits, with intelligences, with even archangels, angels. Use divine names, right? This is essentially, like Paxton is saying, their middle pillar. And it became the inner order's way of invoking a force like that. And again, that's after you've worked with the force for a period of time. So if you are, let's say, a Martinist working in operation, and you want to invoke a name, you might just take that name, and manifest that force. Okay? So many ways you can use this. You can use this in the Mass. Yeshua. Yeshua is always a great name to work with this. Anyways, so that is some ways to tap into a current, how to activate a current with yourself in order to enliven your ritual work, in order to make it not make-believe, but actually enlivened, energetic. I believe no magic truly occurs unless there's a force behind it, right? Other than just your own ego and your playthings. You actually have a divine force behind you. You have the light behind you. You have an egregore you're working with. Well, with that, if there's no questions, we'll move on to theory again and jump into the next section of today's talk. The tree of life in 4 worlds is a sphere. Now, this is a quite an old diagram. This is probably first seen in Rosenroth, I'd imagine. I don't think it's in Kircher. It's probably Rosenroth. But it's an image of the tree of life in 4 worlds. And we talked about it in Kabbalah Part 1 and definitely in Part 2. But let's just review it real quick again. It's the conception of the tree of life as a sphere. We know it as linear and circular. It's circles and lines. This combines both. The outside, we have Ein Sof, the limitless. And the 3 negative veils of existence. Ayin, nothing. Ein Sof, limitless. Ein Sof Or, limitless light. And then it starts to manifest through 10 concentric circles, getting more and more dense to the center in this version. There's an argument that goes the other way too. Both ways are things you should work on in your meditations and contemplations as you visualize a diagram such as this. But we see beginning there at Zalut. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Keter to Malkut. Next world. We'll do a talk on the transition between the worlds sometime. There's a really cool the convoluted forces, and there's a really cool poem by Yeats, The Second Coming, which in my interpretation is all about the Golden Dawn and convoluted forces. Bria, the 10 spheres, concentric circles, Yetzirah, 10 circles, Asiya, 10 circles, boom, it lands in the center. And this totally links with the conception of the, like we talked about in video 2, of the Zimzum, and then the line extending down, which I had it in my mind a moment ago, the Kav, extending down into the infinite space and manifesting itself. Now, this is one version from that diagram. Now, we see in the Golden Dawn's inner order of the RR at AC, the Rose Rube at Ore Crucis, that they took this and ran with it and expanded it into a highly practical system known as the Tree of Life projected in a sphere. Now, there's a paper on that in the Black Brick, the Golden Dawn book by Rigardi, also the Red Brick. The Tree of Life projected in a sphere. It's also astronomical tarot, convoluted forces. We're going to condense all those talks down just to explain these diagrams and why I think they're important. On the left is an image from the Black Brick of the Tree of Life in a sphere. We'll talk about that and explain in a moment. On the right is a much more easier to comprehend diagram. It's a little thing that Robert Wang made for his book Kabbalistic Tarot. Now, it's the tree we're used to, right? Now, there's Keter, Hakma Bina, Kesed Gevura, Tifret's in the center, Netzach, Hud, Yesod's in the center, Malkut. See that? Notice that there's 4 pillars expanded around. There's 1 Keter, 1 Tiferet, 1 Yesod, 1 Malkut, 1 middle pillar. Okay, the center. Then there's the extremities. The extremities double. So instead of just having 1 Hakma, you have a Hakma and a Hakma. Bina, Bina. Kesed, Kesed. Gevura, Gevura. Gevura, Gevura. 1 Tiferet. 2 Netzachs. 2 Hods. 1 Yesod. 1 Malkut. And yes, as the peanut gallery says, it's a little Wang. With 2 Netzachs. So the diagram you see on the left is the exact same thing. It just might be a little harder to conceptualize. One day I'll make a colored version of this. Someone out there has made like a 3D version of this too. But those are all just nice aids until you create them in your mind. You know? Our goal isn't to turn on a VR headset and have it happen to us. Our goal is to activate these symbols within our sphere sensation so they become not just passive symbols, things we talk about and philosophize but have no meaning to us. They should become living realities within the sphere of our being, within the sphere of sensation, within our aura, within our soul. Otherwise, we're just playing Dungeons and Dragons. That does kind of look like a bet. It's supposed to be a calf, though. That truly is a calf. It's just an interesting font. So we see there in the very top. I'm going to explain this now. This is looking downwards. Actually, let's move on to another diagram. Hold on. Back up. So this got actualized in the Sphere Group, which was founded by Florence Farr. And for years, my partner in crime and I, we initiated a series of experiments to work with this process and to re-enliven the Sphere Group. So to kickstart this, we started working with the basic tree life projecting sphere you see here, which we're going to talk about. We worked with the lightning flash through the 4 worlds, as well as the permutations of Tetragrammaton through the 4 worlds and the secret names of Ab, Ma, Sag, and Ben, and the permutations of Yud He Vav He. We'll touch on that briefly in the end. Darcy Kuntz has a good brief history of the Sphere Group in his Enochian Experiments of the Golden Dawn, published by Holmes Publishing in 1996. To summarize the Sphere Group, very honored soror SSDD, Florence Farr. She created the Sphere Group in the original HOGD temple the summer of 1898. It was composed of members of the Zelator Adeptus Minor grade and above, so the 110s of the 5-6 grade, the ZAM grade members and above. So it was an adept-only order, or group. This later shifted to only include members of THAM and above, so it was considered a very high practice within this original group. Now, not only did they create the Tree of Life in a sphere around them, And they use this as a way to, like we've talked about, to create the astral body and to have interactions with it. You can do magical operations with it, which we'll talk about later. But also as a way to connect with each other in your own spheres across great distances. And they use this as a way to create an egregore during times of struggle. You could use this as a healing rite. There's some evidence that this was used in World War II as a healing rite, or in World War I as a healing rite against dark and malevolent forces. That everyone would connect in their own individual temples astrally at the same time, whatever that is, like say 9 p.m. Universal Standard Time every Friday. And they'd get in their temples and they'd open up the Tree of Life and every single Sephiroth. So they'd go, we'll get to that. I should probably do it now. I'm going to come back to this slide. So let's talk about how you conceptualize this Tree of Life projecting sphere. On the left, that is looking down. That's the northern view. On the right, that's looking upwards. That's the southern view. I'm going to resist making a joke there. So notice that there's Keter in the center. Malkut below. Yes, sorry. Dion Fortune used things like this for healing. But Florence Farr was the one that headed the original sphere group. So there's Keter above, Malkut below. Remember, there's only one Keter, one Malkut, one Tiferet in the center, so it's not pictured, one Yesod in the center, so it's not pictured either. Now, on this diagram, we have Hakma, Hakma. See that? 2 Hakmas. 2 Binas, like I talked about. 1 Tiferet. 2 Keseds. 2 Gaburas. 2 Hods. Sorry, 2 Netzachs. 2 Hods. You can't see those because we're looking north. If we flip it over, now we can see there's your 2 Netzach, there's your 2 Hod. And we can guide you through a meditation on this. Now, once we started working with this, we realized that these points here, I was just talking with Sam Robinson about this today, of Rosicrucian tradition, the Tiferet points, that most people don't probably understand these. Our interpretation of this, and then you see all these other things. All these other things are the paths. Okay, and you can get highly complex. Instead of 22 paths, there's now 44 paths. Because you have to have a path going from Keter to Hakma here, Keter to Hakma here. So there's 2 Alephs, 2 Bayets. Well, I guess there wouldn't be 42 because there's still just the center line, right? Anyways, you get the idea. Now, these Tets in the quarters, those are called Tiferet points. You see they're also here, Tiferet. T, T, T. Those are Tiferet influence points. That's where the heart sends out a ray and creates something to occur. Just like we talked about in the vibratory formula, sending a ray out from your heart to make something occur, make something awakened or manifest. Those being the Tiferet points, I truly believe this diagram, I should have done it, I forgot to do it, needs to be tilted 45 degrees. We're going to get more complex than that later, but just for the moment, it needs to be tilted 45 degrees. Okay, Hakma's not in front of you. Then you'd be walking into a pillar the whole time, right? The pillars are is a square around you, or really a big, long, double cube rectangle. How appropriate. Double cubical altar. So, let's close our eyes, and we'll try to give you a way of working with this. Funny, I had this whole thing written on the right, and I just went off the top of the cuff instead. So, we're going to go back to this diagram so you can visualize it. Seeing that diagram, I want you to imagine that you are in the center. Your Keter, your Tiferet, your Yesod, your Malkut, and you're looking between the Tet, the yellow-green path. You're looking between that. You're not looking at the pillars. The pillars are right here and right here. So if you reach out 45 degrees to your front, those are the pillars. 45 degrees to your back, those are the other pillars. Okay? So with that, let's do a brief meditation on this. Close your eyes. See Keter above yourself, the divine name AA. We've already activated that. To our front. Ooh, this is where it gets tricky. To our front right and back left, 45 degrees, 2 Hakmas. These are the levels of the ear. Yah. That divine name. Hold that light. Yah. Back to Keter. The other direction. 2 Binahs. Yahweh Elohim. Okay, to your front left, your back right. Back to Keter. 2 Cheseds. Okay. Chesed in your left shoulder. Behind your left shoulder. Chesed before you. Bring it back in. 2 Gevoras. Gevora here, Gevora there. On your right and in front of you to the left. Bring it back up. 1 Tiferet. There's something being said about that. Why there's 1. Back to your Keter. All the way down. Netzach on your left. Netzach in front of you on the right. This is the level of the hips now. Bring it back up. That'd be Yahweh Zavaot. Bring it back up. Down to 2 Hods. A Hod on your right hip. A Hod before you on the left. Elohim Zavaot. God of armies. Lord of gods of armies. 1 Yesod, 1 Malkut. Okay, that is a crash course in how to visualize this thing. It takes time to work on, but then now you have this 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional tree of life going on within your sphere of sensation to work with. And that's where these maps come in to help understand that. We could end there, but I think let's push it a little more. And you can start geeking out in the paths. When you really get this process in your mind, you're like, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ket, Tet. You can click all that stuff in. For in-depth study on this, check into, oh yeah, we're going to get there at the very end. Check into The Tree of Life Projecting the Sphere by Greatly Honored Father SRMD. It's in the black brick. And also The Law of the Convoluted Revolution of the Forces, symbolized by the 4 aces around the North Pole. Also check out Astronomical Tarot. You don't need to read any of those. That's for like Golden Dawn geeks. There's some really fascinating stuff if you are highly interested in the Tree of Life. Now, they took this a step further. We've only been dealing with our microcosm right now, right? We're dealing with our own sphere of sensation. They started to project this sphere out to the universe. So, in their sphere, and here's an image of the heavens, right, with all the zodiacal constellations around it. In their operations, let's say every Friday at 9 p.m. Universal Time, you would go into your sanctum, do whatever clearings, invocations you need to do, center, and then you'd create that tree of life in the sphere around you. That's what I want to get back to. You'd create that around you, and then they would create this. When they started doing it, they experienced that they tapped into what they felt was an actual spirit. And I'm probably not going to get the entire story right. Let me read from it, from what I wrote. In the center of the tree, in Tiferet, did they evoke or invoke an astral Egyptian adept who Florence Farr had contacted through his sarcophagus. I believe this was a sarcophagus in the British Museum she went and visited, and she had like a boom, like she had an astral vision of this Egyptian adept. So Curly wasn't the only one doing weird stuff in museums with tablets and stuff. So she contacted this Egyptian adept, and they placed him in Tiferet as a spirit to work with, as an adept, a past master to work with. And he worked with them for a period of time until it was time for him to, quote, pass on to the higher planes and leave their work. The group then replaced that central symbol in Tiferet with an image of the cup of the Stellistes, so the water cup, as an image of the flaming heart and the Holy Grail. Remember we were talking about in our middle pillar practice of that flaming heart? The same thing. And it's a cup receives water, but it's the fiery water, the Eshmaim we're talking about, the fiery water of the Holy Spirit. The group eventually became a source of conflict between Florence Farr and Annie Horniman, who, as well as William Butler Yeats, because Yeats and Horniman were like this at the time. Horniman was specifically suspect of Florence Farr's intentions, but I tend to think that this was a product of Sor FEF, Annie Horniman's ego. Like she was just freaking out. The workings of the sphere group remain a bit mysterious, but we do know they worked the tree life in a sphere, They had the Egyptian adept, followed by the Holy Grail. And ironically, we learn from Sor Fef's own writings that, quote, the group consisted of 12 members, and the symbols were adapted from the star maps in the Tree of Life projected in a sphere, whence they sometimes called themselves the Sphere Group. The 12 members had astral stations assigned to them around this sphere, and a certain Egyptian astral form was supposed to occupy the center. So you'd go into your sanctum, you'd create this, and they would astrally create their own spheres, and then create this 12-station sphere around, and they put the adept in the center as the enlivening force, the guiding force, which eventually became that cup. The intention of the sphere group, as laid down by Felkin in his book, quote, the group as I knew it, and Fortiter, it's a motto, he said, quote, were to concentrate forces of growth, progress, and purification every Sunday at noon, and the progress was first, the formation of the 12 workers near, but not in 36 Blythe Road. Second, formulation round London. So they do it themselves, then round London. Third, formulation around the Earth, so the sphere got bigger. Fourth, formulation among the constellations. So you'd build your personal sphere, you'd connect with everyone else in the astral, you'd connect in the center, and then you'd pull all that divine light into the center, and you'd expand to, let's say, your temple, your city, your state, your nation, the globe, your solar system, the universe. All. So this is very much a practice of Tikkun, of restoration, or as one thing we used to call it back in the old Austin Golden Dawn Temple, was Rosicrucian healing. It's much like a... Oh man, I'm blanking on the Eastern term for this, but practice to heal all beings, guiding everyone towards reintegration energetically. So they bring it all the way out. They do the work in this massive macrocosmic force, and then they gradually reverse the process, bringing the quintessence of the greater forces back into the lesser. This whole process was to take about an hour. So we reactivated this using the model of Farr's sphere group, and we began experimenting with our own version of the sphere group, utilizing various methods of formulation, symbols, and names to unite the worlds and bring the one light into active manifestation. And it's a hell of a thing to go through. So here's an example of how they would apply it to the macrocosm. This is from the red brick. You can see because those are the redrawings from Falcon Press. And again, we want to tilt things 45 degrees when you're actually in the sphere itself. But you can start to see all the constellations surrounding. So Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, etc., right? So once the tree is established in your sphere of sensation, you expand the scope of the sphere step by step, following Flor's conception. First individual, then the temple, then the city, then the country, then the world, the solar system, finally, the incomprehensible vastness of the universe. Here at the scope of your divine imagination, of your human imagination, the scope of how far you can stretch your mind, you invoke the divine through Keter and call forth whatever you're working with. We created actual spirit to work with this in the Austin Temple. We send out that light to radiate throughout the universe in the cosmic level, and thence condense it in stages from galactic in reverse back to your individual microcosm. Here's another diagram from the red brick that makes things a little more simple. There are the numbers of the Sephiroth. 1 is Keter. Do it right. 2, Hakma. 3, Bina. 4, Kesed. 5, Gabora. 6, you don't see it because it's veiled by 1, right? Then we go to the right. 7, 8, 7, 8, 1, 9. See those four nines there show the influence of Yesod. It also can influence radiate out, but it's at a lesser point than the Tiferet is. And then here's another image of the tree of life projecting the sphere with the. And this gets much more complex. We can do this in another talk when we talk about the convoluted forces, because I think it's just a super cool geek out thing that I'd love to share with people and see what other people think about it. And who doesn't want to read some Yeats, right? But this shows essentially, the one on the left shows how the aces in the tarot would circulate around Keter, followed by the king, queen, prince from through the revolutions of the tarot, of the court cards. And below, you see the majors moving through the zodiac. So, to make this more complex, not only would you project yourself out into, project the star maps out around you, but in your individual practice, you'd attune your east to whatever your rising sign is. So I am like 18 degrees Capricorn or something like that. So I'd have dead center Capricorn right in the center. And then all the zodiac would go from there. That'd be my center, my east. Because that's my perspective. That's my personal aura sphere sensation. If you're a Gemini, if you're a Gemini 15 degrees rising, you're going to be centered right there. You know, Gemini. And then your houses will, so you'll have Gemini, Cancer, etc., right? So if you're an Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all the way around. So you tune it to whatever your personal microcosm is. So that's an interesting, cool thing to do if you start to do this practice. Another more complicated thing they did is they would apply the Enochian tablets out. And I tried to find my diagrams of my digitals. I couldn't find them. But Chick and Tabby Cicero, in their Enochian Watchtowers, the complete Enochian Watchtowers, or whatever it's called, in that book, they show Westcott's Enochian tablets, which have the Tree of Life around them, and it shows you how they're supposed to sink into the Tree of Life in a sphere of sensation, projected in a sphere. Yeah, totally. That's very... So you'd have, on top of that, the Enochian tablets. To make it very, very simple, let's just say you have air, fire, water, earth. Just like a standard, Golden Dawn setup. And that center line right there is where the sun would pass through. And this is where you do your work. Morial hectaga, oro ibahios pe, empe arasel gahio, that's this one. Oi pete peduke, etc. So, and each of these has their own astrological implications and all those things going on as well too. So they would graft all these things onto it, and once the key really is in Chick and Tabby's book, where it shows Westcott's tablets with the Enochian tablets with the Tree of Life of the sphere projected upon it. With this, you now have a map of the Earth. The idea with the Enochian tablets is they should wrap the Earth. And with these, you can now start to connect to different points on the Earth and make different things occur. You can, if you want to zone in London, you go, bink, here's that square. And you can do your magic upon that square. You want to zone in India, whoosh, bam, go into that one. Or at least in theory. So an interesting way to, and also it's a way to pop the Enochian tablets out into your sphere of sensation and project it in the macrocosm, which can make your Enochian work a lot more enlivened. Is there anything else you think we should cover on the sphere before we briefly touch upon the four worlds and how that can be used with the middle pillar, with or without the sphere? Cool. There are a lot of stuff out there. So the unfolding through the four worlds. We've seen this diagram already. We've talked about it especially in part 2. Absolute Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. Just like here. Absolute Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. The divine name manifesting through four worlds. This is Jacob's ladder in the classical Old Testament in the Zohar. It's also a tool we can use for ascension. Once you work on truly manifesting the tree of life within your sphere, it doesn't have to be the tree of life projected in a sphere. It can be just the tree of life. you can use that as a way to start working on traveling the planes, or more properly, rising on the planes. Connecting up with your Keter. So if this is your material body over here on the left, this is Asiya. So you've invoked the force around you. Now you want to seek to strive up into this yellow sphere. You see that they overlap. So the Malkut of the higher world, the Malkut of Yetzirah, is seated in the heart of Asiya. So in your heart is the Malkut of the next world. And I touched upon this briefly in the Shem talk and briefly in Kabbalah Part 2. That's why I think it's really important to paint your own tree life in the four worlds, or to print out ones with them and start learning the colors. Because in your meditation, if you can now create the colors of Asiya around you and then start to color this into Yetzirah, it's an easy way to literally astrally pull yourself up so that your new Keter, instead of being here, is here. Your new Keter is the Keter of Yetzirah. And now you're having out-of-body experiences, right? It's another way, kind of like Robert Bruce in his Astrodynamics book talks about the rope method, that you're laying down, you're meditating, you visualize, you get the energy going, you get your calmness going, and then you project an image of your body above you. Then you connect a rope between your heart, and this is the simple version. You use that rope to pull yourself out into that astral copy. And when it occurs, you might hear like shattering glass or shaking, and like really crazy things occur as your body releases, right? As you pass that threshold. But this is a way, through using just kosher Kabbalah, to pop up into Yetzirah, into your astral body. And then from there, you can try to pop into Bria and do the same thing, graph the next tree, etc., etc. There's a great book on the tree of life in four worlds. I think the easiest way to comprehend this is through Halevi's book, Kabbalah and Exodus. That book brings you through a story we're all very, very familiar with, but he breaks down every step of Exodus and shows you where they are in the tree, where different patriarchs are, where occurrences are. Hello, Darcy. Good to see you here, bro. And thank you for the compliment. We referenced your book a couple times, so we gave you some plugs, specifically the Enochian Experiments of the Golden Dawn. It references these things to make them more tangible and gives you a mythology you're used to that helps to make this tree life in four worlds, instead of this like massive, like, whoa, what's going on, it makes it more comprehensible. So highly recommend picking that book up. Here's just another way to view the tree life in four worlds. Again, we went in this in depth in Kabbalah Part 2. But these are the four worlds. Yud, fire of absolute. Nearness, unfathomable. Hey, Bria, the world of creation. Vav, air, Yetzirah, the world of formation. And then Hey, the world of Asiya, action. So the physical world of matter that we live in right now. And I'd beg to say that usually when we're doing our middle pillar operations, we're primarily working in here. And we're working on getting into here. Right? And this could be a much longer talk of, where does the HGA sit on there? Or what is the higher divine self, and where does that sit? And is that different from the HGA? Something to think about. I'll skip the quote from Genesis because we'll talk about that in Kabbalah Part 2. Another way to view the four worlds is, again, absolute nearness. These are the king scale. Note that the path colors you're used to when you see the tree of life that you're used to, right? You use the king, the objective paths. Those are the Sephiroth we're used to in Bria, the queen scale. So the tree life we're used to is this mixture of Yud and Hey, right? And then the colors of the prince scale, Yetzirah. And lastly, the colors, the murky, mixed colors of Asiya. Another way that we can, maybe we'll talk about this in a future talk, another way we can work on this rising in the planes, because this whole talk is really about activating your astral body, pulling an energy current, and then using it either to make something occur through like thaumaturgy, or to have theurgical processes occur, such as rising the planes invocation, etc., etc. Another simple way to do this and to work with the four worlds is through the Tetragrammaton Yakud, the four worlds, primarily through the name Yud He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton. Yud being absolute, Yah, Yud He being Bria, Yud He Vav, Yetzirah, Yud He Vav He, Asiya, and its corresponding secret names of Ab, Sag, Ma, Ben. Yud, He, Viv, He, Yud, He, Vav, He, Yud, Va, Ha, Vav, Ha, Yud. Unifying them always in the center under Yeshua. There's just a little teaser for something we might talk about in the future. This is also not unique to the West. This is an image I found in my martial arts researches. Taekwondo gets a bad rap sometimes, but old school Taekwondo, specifically the International Taekwondo Federation, the first form is called Chunji, and it's meant to exemplify these are hexagrams, but the trigram of Kion and the trigram of Kun, heaven and of earth. And the kata itself, the form you do, is meant to symbolize bringing heaven down to earth and bringing earth up to heaven. And it's essentially a karate taekwondo LBRP. You go in four directions, you bring it down, strike in one direction, next way, bring it down, strike, next way, boom, boom, boom. Come back to the center. Then you do above in four directions, above in four directions. And then you center it all with 2 forward, 4 back, 2 forward, 2 back. You've essentially created this diagram around you. This gets further projected in the World Taekwondo Federation, where their first 8 katas, though they're rather elementary as far as actual martial arts, the philosophy behind them is amazing. I have a 10-part series of that on my personal YouTube, Prana Martial Arts, in which we talk about how each kata represents one of those 8 classical Chinese elements of the I Ching. Qian, Kun, etc., etc. Earth, air, earth, heaven, earth, mountain, lake, etc., etc. So this is a diagram. I can't credit who did this. I don't know where I found it. Sorry. But it is an image of the 64 trigrams of the I Ching projected out into a sphere. So this is a hell of a thing to wrap your mind around if you're an I Ching person, which some of us are. So this isn't unique. There's ways this can be used in other systems. The core of it is finding this way to, as Paxton said, create balance between heaven and earth, between Keter and Malkut, centered through the will of your heart, through love under will. Hope that was what y'all were kind of looking for. You've already seen all these recommended readings. Again, I got to plug things because I forget to do this. This video will be up on our OMS YouTube. We have something like 30, 35 videos up there already. We're doing webinars just about every Friday, right? Unless I'm out camping or something. So check out the OMS YouTube, subscribe to it. That's the way you'll see things when they come up the fastest. Not everything goes through Facebook Live, just our live stuff. I'll be dropping another video on the OMS YouTube in a couple days, for example, that is brand new to the public on Saint Martin. If you are interested in joining the OMS and joining the way that we work Martinism, you can join the Martinism Aspirants to OMS private Facebook group. Just type in that quote or go to the website at the bottom. You can also find us through our OMS Facebook page, facebook.com/martinismnet. And last but not least, there is the martinism.net, our core website. So lots of ways to contact us. Hope that this has been beneficial for you, and that this is, and we'll keep doing these. You know, we're not just doing Martinism. We're not just doing Gnostic stories, Gnostic histories. We're tapping into foundations of Western mystery tradition. We've done some talks on alchemy, the Splendor Solis, Kabbalah, the Shem HaMephoresh. We're considering doing one on scrying at one point. So lots of interesting stuff going on. Thank you all very much for being here. And I'll see you all on the flip side. If we want to, I could pull up a free conference call and we can get late-ish good dinner. Thank you all very much for coming. People from all over the world. Darcy, it's good to see you jump in and be here. Haven't talked to you in quite some time, man. Thank you, Paxton, for all your insight and all of your great comments. And glad we've got people literally from around the world in these calls. So hope to talk to you guys soon. Hit us up if you got questions. See ya.